Yo guys, Gen here back with more Call of Duty Black Ops 6 content ahead of the Black Ops 7 launch as a final summary of this game, wrapping up and determining whether Black Ops 6 is still worth playing leading up to the release of Black Ops 7 and really discussing what Black Ops 6 got right and wrong. So on that note, let's get right into it. So I guess first things first, the thing I wanted to discuss as a general overview of this video, I really want to dive into the return of the Prestige system, the 3 master camos in this game, the game's maps and modes online including the face-off playlist, and things like SBMM on pubs, as well as Zombies Revival, the Warzone mess that we've had this whole year, and what Treyarch got right versus wrong. So I guess first things that I want to discuss is the Prestige system. I think this being back in Call of Duty, I have no idea why it took them so long to bring this back, because we saw things like the race to Prestige Master again back in the sort of YouTube trend right at the start of the game. That was a massive hype train. That was something I really enjoyed doing. Getting to Prestige Master really early doors was something I actually had to grind for out on the side of the background. I think they got this right, and I really hope this continues going forward. I have no idea why this seasonal Prestige bullshit thing happened in the first place, and as to why players like myself who like to spend more time than the average player playing games gets capped per season. Like, that made no sense. It was not a retention tactic to try and bring players back. Like, I don't want to come back to a game just to get to Prestige Master if that's what it takes. I want to be able to grind it out and sort of, it's called Prestige after all. You're trying to demonstrate that you are better than the next player by showing off that icon and really getting to that level as early as possible. The quicker you are to that level, there's a common stigma with players who get to Prestige Master really early. They tend to be the sweats, as people call them, or whatever it may be. That's something you should be proud of. You're just like master camos, and we'll get onto that in a second. But the thing about prestiging is so iconic and so rewarding by having to grind out the game and actually benefiting outside of just the game in itself by having something else to play for. Like, ever since Black Ops 4, which by the way, that was my favorite ever master camo, that red sort of dark matter in Black Ops 4. I absolutely loved that one. But the grinding itself in this game was actually pretty fun for the most part for this master camo, for all of them at least, because I have got all three, the Nebula, the Abyss, and the dark matter, and grinding that out was actually really fun on public matches. Now we'll get into the sort of maps and the modes and how that sort of dictated how you grind it out and most efficient ways to actually get the camos in itself just in a short while. But for the master camo itself, adding prestiges back into the game actually was the first time since Black Ops 4, as I said, where you had to try and juggle prestiging with weapons you had unlocked from the start of your level, and this was all a new aspect that I've forgotten all about. Like I said, I don't know why they took this out of the game in the first place from all those years ago, and not having it all of this time was actually tragic now that you think of it, and it actually comes back to you so quickly of how much you enjoy grinding out master camos, especially, like, you can be a really casual player or a sweaty player, someone who plays the game all day long. You can actually be either or and still really enjoy grinding out your prestige as well as your master camos in this game. And like I said, having the prestige system back in the game really allowed players to adapt to how you want to grind out your master camo, and really allowed players who are really effective at multitasking to sort of get there quicker. And that's sort of an aspect I really like in this game, like especially if I'm a high skill player or a sort of player who likes to play this game a lot more than the average person. Being able to sort of prestige and juggle which weapons you want to be using at different times was sort of a really cool aspect, and something I was trying to teach and help my friends understand the best and most efficient ways I was finding. I don't use, let's say, a whole category of ARs and then leave yourself with no ARs left for the rest of the game whilst you're grinding out the camo. And the same thing with like any other category. It was all about trying to use different types of weapons whilst also not utilizing the weapons that you unlock right at the start of your prestige, because you wanted to save them for any time you do prestige, that you had something to still be progressing whilst you prestige. And it was about balancing the two, and I really loved that. It was something new that I hadn't done for so long, and it was something that I almost forgotten about, as I said. And like having that back in the game, just like I said, more things than just the game in itself, having something to play for above and beyond Call of Duty in itself, it's always great for the game and the community, especially the general player base that likes to spend more hours into the game than maybe the average player. And that's something that I really cherish in Call of Duty, especially in multiplayer in itself. I think like the deep progression in itself got you hooked, especially the casual players. The Omni movement definitely shined in public matches for evasive plays and cool clips and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily sure how I still feel about it. Like, I still am, like, I'm an old school player who plays Call of Duty from right from the start. I still love the typical movement system, but I do appreciate that the game does have to evolve and players want to have new things, and I think they definitely got it right with that. But in terms of like what they got it wrong, I'd say the grind feels very repetitive in this game, or just different in like a grindy way. And some people I've saw sort of hated the diamond camo requirements, and it sort of could be frustrating with how you had to get camos in some sort of sweaty lobbies, and how that sort of implemented with poor matchmaking, how sort of your experience was sort of interpreted in terms of having a really fun game trying to use a weapon you didn't really like, and also having a miserable game using weapons that you don't want to use meant you didn't really want to play the game. And I guess that's kind of the trade-off with having to go for a master camo. That's why it's so rewarding. And also with prestiging and all that sort of stuff, you cannot always have it fun and always have the good times. You have to endure the bad side, the pain, the frustrating fighting things, like using the knife or whatever it may be. There's always a really annoying weapon that you have to go and grind out. And like in this game, there was definitely those sort of camos, and that everyone had to try and like trade off with how rewarding that master camo eventually was going to be, which it did turn out to be a really good camo. And I like the fact that there was a Nebula one on zombies and Abyss on Warzone, which we'll get into just in a short while. But just on the maps and the modes, I definitely think there were some really good maps on this game, such as Payback, Skylon, Subsonic, Babylon, face-off maps such as Stakeout, which I actually got a nuke on, and I thought it was worth mentioning because I made a video which is linked in the description of me getting a nuke in under 3 minutes on that Stakeout playlist. So I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. But I do think it's a very cool map, and as well as that, Nuketown of course got added later in the game's release. But then the rest of the maps, I'd say they're pretty average or just poor in my opinion. And I think that's what one of the biggest things this game got wrong. There was just no sort of replayability later down the line once you've got enough of these maps, and the maps in itself didn't really stick. They weren't that great. And from a competitive point of view, which is kind of how I like view some of these maps, I just don't think that the maps in itself were good enough this year. And I know they've said about how Black Ops 7 is going to give you the better maps, that they spent more time on and all this BS that maybe it could be, but we'll have to see of course how that turns out. But for this game, I think that was something that crippled this game in its longevity and how players will come back to it. But I think the Stakeout playlist or the face-off playlist in itself was actually better almost in some regards, where a lot of players found themselves actually playing those maps and modes more often than the actual core playlist maps and modes themselves, which I guess is not a good thing in the grand scheme of things, because if you have 12 other maps on the game that you've produced and people aren't really playing them and they're not enjoying them, then I guess maybe something's fundamentally wrong, which we all clearly knew came to fruition, and that's kind of how it played out. But I guess also just like the modes like Infection and Prop Hunt getting added, they were always going to be fun, and me and my mates had a great time playing these. But the issue, like I said, from a competitive point of view, it's how I sort of rank a lot of my maps and how I determine whether it's a playable map, because I like to play the game at a higher level. As you guys already know, if you guys aren't new to the channel, I guess you guys are, I do play the game at a very high level compared to the average person, like I said, due to playtime, whatever it may be. And that, I guess, it sort of leads me on to the next point I want to discuss, is skill-based matchmaking. Like, not even to mention that to this point, a true game-destroying feature, and I'll happily stand on this hill and discuss this with anyone as to why this is not a good feature in Call of Duty or gaming in general for any other game that this is implemented on. But I know it's a sensitive and controversial topic, but honestly, as someone who's been gaming for 20 years, and I've been playing COD since 2006, and by the way, I do work a full-time job, as this has been a common discussion point around people who are pro SBMM. They tend to use the excuse and only sort of say that people who dislike SBMM are sweats who don't have jobs and all that sort of stuff, which is just not true by any means. And SBMM is something I could talk about all day long as to how it's destroyed COD in itself and the public match experience in its entirety, but we can save that for another day, and I can go into that in so much more detail. I do not want to waste this video. As I said, I'm summarizing Black Ops 6, but SBMM, in my opinion, definitely did not make Call of Duty fun this year, and it definitely just felt so off. And there were so many games where me and my friends, who, by the way, my friends are not at the same level as me, some of them just don't play the game at the same level, they don't have enough time to play the game, whatever it may be, and if they ever play with me, they get thrown right into the deep end where they have to play against people who I'm meant to be playing against, which you can argue is kind of what the point of it is, because I see that's the pro SBMM people who like SBMM because they think they shouldn't be playing against the sweats. But that's how you get good at games, and it's just like anything in sports or whatever. You don't get good by playing against the people at the same level if you're at the lower level. You get good and learn more about the game by playing against people at a random level. And I'm not saying you have to do it every single game. Like, that's the whole point of what the server-based matchmaking was beforehand. You got to play good people every other game. It wasn't every game. And if you were always playing against good people and always getting shot on, that's because you were not great. That's just the simple truth. And I'm sorry if that upsets people, but that's the truth. And if you sometimes found that games you were going off and sometimes games you weren't, like, that's how it was once upon a time. But now it's gotten to the stage where every working person who returns home at 6 o'clock and wants to sit there with a beer like people stereotype, and they have a 0.3 KD, I get that they shouldn't have to load into a game and just be playing against people like myself. I'm all for that. I agree with that too. But at the same time, not everyone is like that. There's so many people, like-minded individuals who play the game maybe just at a lower level, but still the same amount of game time, who fortunately get put in lobbies where they feel like they're the best in the game all the time, and then they go and play with people who are actually better, and they realize they're really not that great, and it's like a bit of an eye-opening thing, and they sit there and go, well, I don't like this anymore because I want to be the best in my lobby. But at the same time, if you haven't earned being the best or being good in every single game, then you shouldn't be the best or topping every single lobby in every single game, because that's how it works, right? But look, like I said, I can go into this in so much more detail. I'm not going to waste any more time in this video. We're going to get right back into the video in itself for Black Ops 6 in the summary. As I said, we're going to move on to the Zombies revival and what it did good this year. And I personally think the revival of Zombies was significantly important this year in terms of the longevity of Black Ops 6. At least for myself, I'm a massive Zombies player. I produce weekly Zombies videos every single week for all different Call of Duty games, from Black Ops 3 and 2 and all sorts, all the way up to now in present day leading into Black Ops 7. And something I really enjoy about Call of Duty is zombies, and I play it a lot. And I think Black Ops 6 Zombies this year was really good. It started out really strong with the likes of Liberty Falls, Terminus, and Citadel Day more and more. There were so many good maps this year, and I just think the round-paced zombies and the maps in itself are always going to be a great feature. Coming back to the sort of core with also the new additions of things like the perk system, the augmentation, the salvage, all of that sort of stuff. Like, I'm an old school player, and I still enjoy these aspects because I can appreciate they need to adapt and make things more interesting and new and all that sort of stuff. And at the same time, I think this game got it right in terms of combining the two, old school round-based zombies with new stuff as well, making this a really enjoyable experience. And after all, like I said, I have Nebula on this game, which means I played a lot of zombies, and I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. There was not really much I didn't enjoy about this game. There's certain maps and stuff and certain issues that, of course, that this map created, but for the most part, in the grand scheme of things, across all of the maps in itself, I think this game was incredible for zombies in itself, and I definitely think that going into Black Ops 7, there should be high expectations because it started off and set the bar quite high on itself already. Of course, there's room for improvement, and of course, there are better titles for zombies. I'm not delusional, I do know that, but for the most part, I think this has got us back to a good level and a good area in terms of where zombies is in itself. Now, onto Warzone, we have to talk about this. I still don't know how I feel about this, even right at the end of the year, on what Warzone did right and wrong. I think Area 99 definitely did not get the credit it deserved. I have also made a video linked in the description of a really high kill game I got way back at the start of the game of me playing Warzone and Area 99, getting I think it was like a 35 or a 36 kill game right at the start of the game, which is pretty cool in case you guys are interested and you want to see Area 99 gameplay again, or just Warzone in general for this channel. But also, I think from that point, it sort of was a bit sticky of how this game felt on Warzone, with the Omni movement, with the maps, with the likes of Verdansk taking so long to come out, and I just don't really know how I feel about this game in itself in terms of Warzone from a point of view. And Abyss was the first time I ever grinded a master cam on Warzone, and I still don't know if I will do it again, because I've always been like a high kill sort of win to back-to-back win sort of streak player on Warzone and Battle Royale itself, and I don't know how I necessarily feel about going for master camos, using guns I absolutely despised on Warzone itself, playing against people who probably think they got the better of me, but really I was using a weapon I despised, like a single fire weapon or whatever it may be, or the shotguns. There were some really annoying guns, and I have gone over that in the Area 99 video and other Warzone videos on this channel, because I do produce weekly content for Warzone as well, pretty much as well, so in case you guys are interested or didn't know that. But like, I just do think there was a mess in overall in itself. There was just some awful sort of clunky omni movement areas. Black Ops 6 had some sort of excessive recoil sway in this game in terms of right at the start. The audio has been non-existent. Like, the footstep audio is so inconsistent and just horrible. I've heard that the PC performance had so many issues, broken features and stuff like that with matchmaking. I just feel like overall Warzone was a bit of a downgrade from itself from previously, and also I just think that Verdansk didn't really hit the way that the community maybe thought it did. Like, I love Verdansk. I absolutely hold it in a high regard, but I don't think with the way this game works, it felt as fun. I just feel like it wasn't as great as maybe it would have been, but that's in a whole separate conversation for itself. Like, Verdansk was great back in its day, one of the greatest things ever made in the last 10 years, of course, at least in Call of Duty's terms, and I think that will sort of be held in high regard forever. But I think the new addition, the new sort of variation and iteration of Black Ops 6 Verdansk just didn't really feel the same. I think that the meta right away was just horrible with the HDR, the sniping. It was just so slow. There was no, obviously, zips and stuff, which I'm not against or anything like that. I just feel like the game in itself didn't work as well for Verdansk as it did back in the day, but that's a separate discussion itself in its entirety. We can talk about that, or of course you can let me know down below in the comments in case you guys have different opinions that you guys want to touch on, and maybe share on what you guys thought this game did right and wrong. And I guess Black Ops 6 is a summary in case you guys disagree with my views on Black Ops 6 multiplayer, on the master camos, the prestige system, SBMM, of course, the biggest talking point, the most controversial topic in all of Call of Duty at its time, and as well as zombies, the revival, the maps, the modes, all that sort of stuff. But that's pretty much it, guys, in terms of a summary and an overview of the game in itself leading into Black Ops 7, on whether this game is still worth playing to this date with Black Ops 7 just around the corner, or whether it's worth utilizing this downtime to play games like Borderlands 4 or Battlefield 6 or whatever it may be to keep you guys going. But we've also not talked about the beta for Black Ops 7, which of course was a week or so ago, and that was a really fun time for the most part, which I'm going to save that for a future video going into Black Ops 7 itself, which will come out in a few weeks' time. But for this video, Black Ops 6 itself was really good in my opinion for the most part, until it died out really early. It just did not last that long, and that is largely due to the maps and modes in my opinion, as well as other features like Warzone not being as great and all of those sort of things. So hopefully Black Ops 7 will improve that and change our opinions, and just have to see how it plays out, of course, with the game's release. We're coming out in a couple of weeks' time, so stay tuned in case you guys are interested, and sticking with me throughout the coming weeks for all of the Black Ops 7 content that's going to be on this channel, for the camo grind, the prestige grind, all of that sort of stuff, high kill games, whatever, Nuke gameplay, you name it, as well as, of course, continuing the zombie series, continuing playing Warzone and stuff like that. So stay tuned in case you guys are interested. With that said, I'm Vision SGen. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.